It's Monday, and it is also tax day, and today we're talking about residential.
The conversation starts now, right here on Foster Life. It's Monday, tax day, today on Foster Life. And I'm working today because I gotta pay taxes. Oh wait, we don't get paid to do this. We
You don't
just
have
do
to worry about it.
Yeah, we just do volunteer. We just volunteer to do this. But we are glad to be here today. And today we are talking about a big one. A big one today is residential and residential facilities. And boy, I gotta tell you, did you hear our attorney talking about this the other day when we had him in here?
Oh yeah.
I mean, it goes one way or the other. You're either for it or against it, but the in between is hard. And I gotta say, in doing this for the last 5 years, I think that residential plays a very good role for certain kids.
It may be exactly what the kid needs.
Right. And I can see where it can be beneficial. But I'm going to tell you right now, if you want to piss me off, here's how you do it. If a kid doesn't need residential, and you're going to put them in residential just because there's no other place for them to go, that doesn't work for me. So today we have Courtney and Catherine with us, and you all know Courtney because she's here on Mondays, every Monday with us, and it's Monday.
Yeah.
And Catherine has an extensive background in social work and also has been involved and worked with residential facilities, and she's going to give us a lot of input as well into this, and I think that we can discuss it. So when we come back, we're going to talk about what types of things we look at when we're thinking about placing a kid in residential, because nobody wants to upset me. So we're not even going to talk about if they're not supposed to be in residential. We're not even going to go there today. We're going to talk about if they need residential, what types of things. We'll be back right after this.
On Foster Life.
Foster TV is looking for 12 nonprofits in the United States that serve or work with foster and adoptive youth. Send us a short story or email about how you support the community.
So send your story today.
It's tax day here on Foster Life. Did you get your taxes all done?
Yep,
I bet you
I
got
did.
lots of money back, huh?
I don't know if I'd say that, but
Oh.
a little bit.
Yeah, he's our accounting person. He counts the numbers and stuff. Hopefully he can figure out a way for us to get more money. So, residential. What types of things are we looking for when we're thinking about residential? So we have a kid that has come to our home, and we've tried different things. How do we know that residential might be a good option for this child?
when you're looking at residential, or a
Uh-huh.
kid that needs residential, you wanna look at, make sure that you've tried everything. You've looked at counseling. You've looked at what are those behaviors? Are they having destructive behaviors? Are they after maybe seeing a parent? Are they having issues with school? Are they self-harming? Are they not taking medication? All those factors. Are they completely out of control? Are they jeopardizing actual placement? Is it the last ditch effort? Have you tried therapeutic foster care? Have you tried everything in your well before you actually move to residential? That should be the last thing that you ever think of as a caseworker, as a foster parent, anything.
If they're being a danger to themselves or to the family, you probably need to be starting to think in that direction. At least, even if it's just a temporary thing, like a mental health facility. Or
Yeah, like an acute stabilization type
Uh-huh.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah,
'Cause
definitely.
it might maybe just be a medication management kind of a thing.
Right,
It just doesn't mean you have to send them off somewhere for a long-term purpose.
right. I think the biggest thing that we found with this, because we've sent a couple of our boys to get intense counseling with what they call EMDR, and it has worked wonderful for them, but we did that through residential. I think the biggest thing that me and E learned through that was you can't feel guilty for doing it, because we felt like we were giving up on them, and now that they've been home for quite some time now, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, this was the best thing that we ever did for our boys, because they came back very changed, and it worked really well for them. So what types of facilities are out there? What types of things are we gonna see when we're looking for a residential facility?
So there's a few. There's secure, there's unsecure, there's nature facilities, there's like working facilities. It really depends on what you're looking for to best equip or help that kiddo out there.
Right.
The best thing to look for is you need to do your research, and your case manager needs to do the research to see what they're advertising is what they're really doing.
Right. If they're saying that they're gonna go swimming and horseback riding and archery and doing all this stuff, make sure that they really do that, because some facilities will tell you that. And we had this experience with the facility, and then me and the caseworker are sitting in family counseling with the therapist, and she's saying, well, they haven't left the cottage in 2 months because we have kids that are on run risk. And we're thinking, well, our kid's not on run risk, and we were told that he was going to be doing all of this stuff, and this might be why he's having behaviors here.
Yeah, you need to make sure that also it's not on a complete group mentality like that.
Right.
That if one fails, the entire group fails.
Uh-huh.
Because you're not raising a group, you're trying to help one kiddo.
Right.
And so you don't want the kiddo to go in there and just feel like they've completely failed
Right.
instead of helping themselves.
When it comes to looking for a facility, is there a certain like range that you can go, or is it if you want your child to go to like Florida, for instance, if they need something in Florida, which who knows why, but could they go to a facility there?
Generally, you need to stay within the state. There have been instances though where you can get permission to go across state lines though to get that help.
Okay.
We're really close to Arkansas,
Mhm.
and one of our options was to go to a facility that was highly recommended to us in Arkansas, and then an opening came in our second choice facility, so we chose that just because it was closer for us to go. But yeah,
I think that's something you and I were talking about earlier, Rob, is that at one point in time you were doing almost 14 hours in a weekend of just drive time
yep,
to see your kids, two of whom were in care.
Separate
in
directions.
Separate directions, one
Yep.
about an hour away, one about 2.5 hours away.
yep,
And that's something you have to take into account and figure in for caseworkers too. Like how far is actually going to be feasible to place
Yeah.
a kid, because caseworkers don't want to spend 6 hours in a vehicle to
Right.
see their kid for 30 minutes to spend 6 more hours in a vehicle. Like,
Right.
that's not productive work time for us, and it's
Mhm.
definitely not productive time for you guys as a family
Right.
to spend together.
Yeah, and you know, just because they're in a residential facility, if this kid has been in your home for some time, and you've created a bond, I think it's important to know they can still be involved with their treatment, correct?
Absolutely, you should 100% be involved in their treatment. You should know what their treatment goals are for that residential facility.
Uh-huh.
You should know when their group is for that residential. You should know phone calls, you should know showering, you should know eating, you should know everything that they're doing. If there's a book, if there's a handbook, ask for that handbook.
Yep,
Know everything, because that lets that youth trust you
right.
and know that, hey, I can go back.
So even if their goal is reunification, can you still do family counseling and that kind of stuff with the youth as well? If you want them to come back to your house. So say I have a kid in care and we like the kid, but they just need to go do some time of residential, and we really feel like if they're not reunified with their family by the time it's time to come out of the facility, we really want them back. Can we still do family counseling and that kind of stuff as well?
Oh, 100%, because why create more trauma introducing them to another family when they get out of that residential facility? So we want to create as less layers of trauma.
Right.
So yes, absolutely.
And of course, if they're adopted or you're in the process of adopting them, you want to be involved as much as you
Yes.
can, and be with them. When we come back here on Foster Life, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about some things that we've encountered that might raise some eyebrows about residential. And one, you've probably seen him on here before. Brian has been on my show, my 21-year-old, a few times. And I'm going to tell you one thing that really upsets him about being in a residential facility after this. Welcome back to Foster Life on Monday, and we're talking about residential today. So, you have to be really careful in these residential facilities, and one of our boys, it's our son Brian, he's 21, and anytime you bring up residential, he always tells this story, and I hate this story. And it is, when I was in residential, now granted, he wasn't in residential for behaviors, it was more of a convenience type thing, or they had an opening type thing. And so, when he was in residential, he's a little guy. I mean, Brian's not very big, right? And so, when he has to go to the bathroom, he's got to go, and he's got to go now. And I know this because he's been mine for 4 years now, and we take lots of road trips.
Well, he's got a little bladder. Like
Yeah, and I just tell him, I'm like, you know, he'll tell me, he's like, I gotta go. And he always does it when there's like no gas stations around. So we have to pull over, he's gotta go in the ditch. Well, he would tell them at these facilities, I gotta go to the bathroom, and they'd say no. So he would end up peeing his pants. Well, one, very embarrassing for him. And guess what? They consider that a behavior. And so he would get 5 days. What do they call that when they have to stay in their room?
Room restriction.
Yeah, room restriction. For peeing his pants because he really had to go to the bathroom. And I guess that's the kinds of things that worry me when your kid is in those kind of facilities. And I've had to advocate for my kids before. When our other son was in a residential facility, the military staff member in front of me told me he was never going to get out of there because he was never going to pull it together and he was never going to do this and never going to do that. Well, I bit my tongue, but I'll tell you what, that was on Sunday, and Monday morning I had the director's number ringing, I had the caseworker's number ringing, I had the counselor's number ringing, and I made sure that they understood that they were not going to speak to my son like that, because with a kid that has severe reactive attachment disorder, that's the worst thing that you can tell them, is what they can't do and what they're never going to do. And so that's not going to be effective. It's not going to work for anybody. So you have to be that voice for them in those residential facilities.
Absolutely. I think something that a lot of people don't know as well is kids have rights in these facilities. And
Yep.
there's 10 basic rights that you have in all facilities.
Okay, what are
Just a few offhand. You have the right to your religion.
they?
You have the right to speak to your family at any time. You have the right to speak to your caseworker at any time.
Yep.
To your attorney at any time. And you have the right not to be physically or emotionally or verbally abused.
Right.
There's grievances. Every facility has a grievance process. And if they tell you that they don't, then they are lying.
Yep.
And those grievances have to be available.
Mm-hmm.
There's also the Prison Rape Abuse Elimination Act. Those forms have to be available to every youth. So those are to protect youth and families, to make sure kids and families are being treated respectfully and appropriately. And it sounds like you were not being told about this.
Right. And when they're in that facility and your kids are saying things to you like, yeah, they're really nice when you're here, but as soon as you drive off, they're doing this, red flag. You want to know about that. You want to see what's going on.
Another thing is making sure that they're staying on their medication, or maybe they don't allow them to have their medication, or they give them too much of their medication. So my question is, who regulates that, and are they able to switch medication while in the facility if the medication isn't working?
So medications are always, most of the time, pretty much every facility across the board has to use a psychiatrist to get medications. The problem that we often see is kids go in on 1 or 2 meds at low dosages, and they come out with 8 to 10 meds with really high dosages that aren't appropriate for their age. So they're literally walking zombies. There's a whole list, and we did a video a long time ago about informed consent, which addresses even more questions to ask. But you can also go online and Google informed consent when it comes to psychotropic medications, and it will give you a list of like 25 questions to ask. Don't be afraid. I've said it before, I'll say it again, don't be afraid to harass the doctor about what you're putting in your child's body.
Right. And the other thing is, you don't need to give that nurse an answer right at that moment. You can write down the medication, the dose, and say, can I get back to you this afternoon? And I just want to do my research a little bit, and I want to check a couple of things, and then I'll get back to you. And that's totally okay to do that. It's not a emergency thing unless they want to do a PRN.
Right, and they will push it. They will, I mean, I've had doctors from acute medical stabilization hospitals call me and say, I need an answer right now. Well, are you going to give it to them right now? Well, no, but I need an answer right now. Well, then you can wait.
Yeah.
I'm the child's legal guardian. I'm going to make the decision, but I'm going to, you can wait. Or I've had doctors say, I'm a doctor. I know what I'm doing. Okay. I'm gonna do some research on it myself,
Right.
and I'll get back to you in 2 hours.
My son, Robert, was in a residential facility here for a long time before we got him. We actually met him in a residential facility. That's where we got with him and started that process. He was on a medication. And when we first got him, he would do this. And I would say, Robert, what are you doing? And I didn't do nothing. Well, why are you doing this? And he didn't even know he was doing this. And it's called a party tick, is what they call it, a party tick. And it was a medication that he was on. So we immediately, when we got him, we got with this caseworker and we said we want him off of this medication because he's doing this all the time. Well, she really didn't know, and that's because, caseworkers go see him for a half hour or whatever. So we immediately noticed it when he came to stay with us. We got him off that medication, and I'm going to tell you, it took a year for that tick to go away because he had been on that medication for so long. And we were asking the doctor, the psychiatrist, and she said, it could take anywhere from a year to 2 years. And she said, and if he's been on it too long, it might never go away.
So, well, I mean, those chemicals are altering your brain synapses. So, in that case, it's telling your brain, like, oh, you need to do this.
Right.
Like, and you're not thinking about it. It's like breathing,
Yep.
almost. Like, your brain naturally tells your body, okay, it's time to take a breath. Well, in this case, his brain is naturally telling him to do this.
Right.
Because that medication has altered it.
Well, when we come back, we're going to talk about some things that you might want to look for if your child is at a residential facility right after this.
On Fosterland.
Foster TV is looking for 12 nonprofits in the United States that serve or work with foster and adoptive youth. Send us a short story or email about how you support the community.
So send your story today.
Yes,
Know where your kid is going to be.
yes. Know where your kid is, and also, they went in there for a reason. If you're visiting and you're not seeing any behaviors change or you're seeing something worse, you have that internal meter that's telling you something's going on.
Right.
That's your checkpoint.
Uh-huh.
Now, are you able to switch facilities?
I was just going to say, I wanted to mention that, you get these timelines from residential facilities. They need 6 months of treatment,
Right.
and they've been there 4 months and suddenly they still need 6 months of treatment. Like, okay, what have you done in the last 4 months? If this is your child or, if your caseworker is involved, don't be afraid to say, hey, look, I think we need to look at a different facility or some other options, or I don't really think they need 6 more months of
Right.
treatment. I think
Right.
the next 2 is fine. Like, don't be afraid to speak up,
Right.
because you spend the majority of your time as caseworkers. We spend very little time in that area. We'd love to spend more, but we have high caseloads. We have a lot of other things to get done. And so we don't get to spend more than an hour, maybe 2 hours in that facility with that child a month, but you're there weekly. Like, check in. Be
Right.
okay with saying with your caseworker, like, I really think we need something else. And if you've got a caseworker who you can really talk to, use them.
Right.
Utilize them.
If you have a child that you've adopted and they're going into residential to kind of work through some stuff, and the facility 30 days them, meaning that they have had too many issues with your child, and so they're put in 30-day, do not panic. We were put in that position and we panicked because we're thinking, well, he's not better and things have gotten worse and everything. And thank God he was 30-dayed. Because we got him the right help that he needed. We got him in the right facility, and now he's doing awesome. He went on a date with a girl the other night, and it was good. And she likes him, and he likes her, and it was amazing. So that it panicked us because they were like, oh, well, we're 30-daying them, and I'm thinking, what? So I called our subsidy worker. That's who you would call the subsidy worker, and then they work with you to find another facility for them during that time. And so you can always do that as well. When we come back, we're going to wrap up, and I want to hit on something that we haven't talked about yet. Be thinking about it. And that is restraints or holds. Some facilities call them holds, some call them restraints. You have to be trained in them, but I want to talk about that because you need to know as a parent that this could happen. Right after this.
Hi, I'm Mitchell. I'm from the Netherlands and we love Foster TV.
Hold over not a child problem.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you want to look into that.
Yep. Don't be afraid to call and ask questions. Don't be afraid. You are your child's voice, and you have them there to get help. And so you want to make sure that you're asking questions. Don't ever just assume that your child is just over exaggerating. Ask, because there's good facilities and there's not so good facilities, and we know that. I want to thank you for coming on today. May 11th, we will be in
Branson, Missouri.
Yep, and we're going to be doing some stuff with foster kids. If you're a foster family or if you're a residential facility and you want to bring your kids, it's at the Wildwood Mini Golf in Branson, Missouri. It's $5 to get in, but we're going to have food. We're going to play mini golf. You can be part of our studio audience. We're going to have a food truck there. We're going to have prizes, all sorts of things. And it's just kind of a day for us to come together and just
Have some fun.
just fellowship together and be together. It's also a fundraiser for Foster Life so that we can continue to bring these types of things to you. We dedicated 100 shows. Foster Life has dedicated 100 shows, and all of us are paid $0 to do this. So it's 100% volunteer. But if we have money come in, that helps us to market and to advertise and to reach more people and to get the words out and to help people. And it also helps to bring new shows like Courtney's new My Rad Life that is coming out in September. And we are really excited about that. And we're going to be talking about reactive attachment disorder. And she's going to do an awesome job hosting that show. And hopefully we can get some really good guests on there that
Yeah.
we can
I
process.
already have
through.
ideas, but I'm keeping
Yeah.
my lips tightly sealed.
Oh, that's good. And so we continue to do that as well. Till Wednesday on Foster Life, we'll be back then. Good to see ya.
Yep.
Bye-bye.
Bye.